Chinese linguistically has gone through a lot over time. Understatement? Yes, but it's also what's been driving my imagination lately as I work on upcoming animations. To anchor that imagination, I find myself resorting to two timelines that don't quite match up. Let me show you. Watch your step. My stage is under construction. A long way to go before the big show. See, I'm working up to a video about a dramatic pivot in Chinese linguistic history, and as I do, I keep finding myself revisiting timelines. So here, come head to this picturesque spot I found outside of town. Deep breath. Let me slow down for just a moment before talking dates and labeling periods. It's all in here somewhere. And how to show it off? Just draw a line? Oh, here goes. You know those beautiful scrolls with imagery or calligraphy? Well, I recently learned more about hand scrolls and how an individual viewer would unroll the scroll from right to left. And while unrolling, you'd just leave a modest window to observe a portion of the whole text or image. As soon as I learned that, I tried to craft one here. Actually, I've been working up to all the main styles of Chinese text over time, but I want to use this particular one for our base timeline, which will just copy the tried and true way of dividing China's history into dynasties. When working up to my Middle Chinese video way back when, the first thing I did was sit down and memorize the dynastic sequence. You know, periods of unification and division. Enter the well-known dynastic cycle quote from the Romance of the Three Kingdoms right after the opening song. I won't challenge that here, I'll just use it as our timeline number 1, the line that runs, again, right to left, through the rulers and the people. I'm practicing my handwriting today, but don't fret if you can't read the characters. Just take in the shapes, the similarities and differences. My biggest visuals will actually represent the development of physical texts throughout the eras, from bones to books and beyond. And as we move through time, I'll explain and draw lines and arrows to help out. If you want to spend more time interrogating this timeline, by all means visit any reliable source or check in with your favorite historian. Or, here's a fun way to do it I can recommend. If you want to follow how audiences recognize each era in Chinese visual media, I really enjoyed this series. Ask anyone who knows better, though, and they'll tell you my periods are missing details. I ignored exact lengths, I dialed down some, I amplified others. And it might step on toes, but I've combined many, but only with compound terms I've actually read used in Chinese. Please know this isn't a stance on historical importance. It's because some periods have outsized linguistic importance. Basically, evidence from here, and here on weighs tons to those who study the development of Chinese over space and time. Okay, so language. I could start with the terms coined in English, which were archaic, ancient, and modern, but nowadays preferences have shifted to old, middle, modern. But I'm going with 4 terms, the way I've read them in Chinese. The 2 oldest stages end in the character gu, meaning old. The 2 newest ones end in dai, era. The first old is upper old. I've mentioned before that up is earlier and down is later, so here the up is like saying early old. Then center or middle, so middle old. The next has near, so it's near era. And finally, we are here, now or current era. So, but where do I put these? For a fast misleading hunch, try this. Split the last 3,000 years into very rough thirds. First draw a line 100 years ago, then go 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, and 3,000 years ago. Consider the 2 bookends as not fully known. That's actually not so bad, but stick around because I need to refine this answer. Starting with the early writings. A little pun here, the earliest documented early, Shang, is the Shang, same phonemes, different tonemes, Shang. Over 3,000 years ago, shells and bones are carved with inquisitive predictions, like this one divines if it'll rain today. Then and before then is internally an era of legend and myth, while externally, linguists trace words way back to Sino-Tibetan or Trans-Himalayan. But that's well beyond our timelines. Back to the Oracle Bone script, it's quite a collection, and it's very old, but gets treated as its own object of study, not even fully deciphered. No, the big early sources are from the next 1,000 years, overshadowed mainly by the ups and downs of the Zhou kingdoms. This is the time to think of the classics written on bamboo slips tied together into manuscripts, and spanning so much material, but for linguists this especially means the Shixing poetry classic because of its bountiful early rhymes. And also something else I'm terribly sorry to mention and move along, but it includes the so-called harmonious phonetics, the sound components that are baked into Chinese characters. After all that Zhou time culminates in the Warring States, the Qin dynasty emerges and rules for just a decade and a half, but gets singled out for its intense standardization, including of language and of script. In my earliest romps through Old Chinese studies, I was taken aback by the amount of time we skip as scholars jump to Middle Chinese sources 1,000 years later. Here I use a compound I've read to combine honestly very different periods into these characters that span 3 dynasties and a 70-year intermediate period. It's squished together only because the rhyme books and rhyme tables from these periods are the evidence that define Middle Chinese, and really let me haul this one out one more time, the Chinese linguistic tradition showcased in this animation. From there, hop ahead or near us to the major sources for vernacular Chinese. Books and novels since at least the Mongol conquest give us evidence of what becomes the great conundrum for anyone new to the last 1,000 years of Chinese linguistics. Fangyan, because Chinese is many dialects, languages, varieties, I guess. Well, throughout the near years, varieties see use alongside a retained classical language, elongated into literary Chinese. But a note in a moment about how Fangyan actually go back even further. From then, we reach the period we have proportionally the least evidence for because it's still ongoing. The Now era, characterized by, how one commenter related to a parallel remark in a previous video, being a native speaker of your home variety and a native user educated in standard Chinese. Okay, so now we have these 2 timelines, and we see how the sources that keep linguists engaged match up to certain periods. Now for the fascinating and messy part. Try to match the 2 up and fit them together in their entirety. If you're like me, you'll have a bit of trouble interlocking them. I spot at least 3 fun problems to leave you puzzling over from when I've tried. Our first problem arises from us splitting into stages in the first place. For example, in Chinese, guwen isn't just a period, but a style, a literary standard engaged with and imitated for a very long time. And Middle Chinese isn't just a period, but a systematic way of analyzing the old classic rhymes. In this way, there can be an all-at-onceness to Chinese sources. Problem 2 is that transitions leave awkward overlaps. First, I'll draw this line from eras I initially associated with near back in time to ones under middle. Because the vernacular evidence actually points back earlier. Basically, modern varieties emerge from Middle Chinese, and Min varieties seem to have diverged earlier still. I like the visual symmetry here too, because Middle Chinese itself spans a period from rhyme books on scrolls to rhyme tables in books with binding. Just as earlier, the bamboo slip books were replaced by paper across this linguistic gap. And gaps, good word, that's problem 3. Intermediate periods cry out for attention. What really catches mine is that the linguistic in-betweens fall at some of the most famous historical periods. The Song dynasty, the 3 kingdoms, and back to the era that gives Chinese its very name, Hanyu, the Han Dynasty. That last curious gap is why I have stuff strewn about this stage we stepped over at the start. I'm crafting something about how the Han period fundamentally altered Chinese sounds and syllables, before and after it. Having logged some hundreds of hours of study behind the scenes, hopefully that'll channel into something worth watching. I'm also happy that even once that's complete, I now have this video I can point back to whenever I want to spend 10 minutes talking timelines in the future, or don't want to. Stay tuned, and thanks for watching. Patrons are still on the decline and views stay low, so secretly I'm also hoping the next uploads will entice you. Then again, seems I'd keep creating even for no one, just like when I started. Thanks to patrons for supporting this one. To everyone, stick around and subscribe for more language, culture, and history.